Good evening. This video is talking about the language and communication that I've noticed in my field placement, field classroom, whatever. Please excuse the fact that I'm extremely sick, so it's hard to understand me. I'm all sinus stuffed up here. But I am focusing on language and communication, specifically social language and social communication. Um, I chose this over academic and cognitive abilities because all 10 of the students are struggling to interact socially appropriately and equally to their grade level peers, whereas cognitively and academically they are on grade level and meeting grade level standards. Um, some of the evidence-based practices that may be helpful to implement are social stories and social playgroups. So, excuse me, structured playgroups. Social stories allow that student to go over social norms through a story that is not themselves and then be able to generalize it to themselves. These can be written by the teacher for the student or can be written with the student and the teacher. In some cases, I've even had students write them themselves, which helps them understand those social norms and skills, and then we work on actually implementing them themselves. I also think a peer-mediated intervention group would be helpful. Those typically developing peers would have to be taught those skills and how to teach the not typically developing peers, those peers with autism spectrum disorder, and then implement those together. But I think a lot of times it's helpful for peers to learn from their peers. I've also noticed that in this class, the 10 students hold each other accountable and correct each other when need be, a lot of times even when they don't do it themselves. So I think that might be a powerful evidence-based practice to use. As far as structured playgroups, again, it allows those typically developing peers to work with the students with autism spectrum disorder. And then as the teacher, it's structured because you're leading that and helping those students to interact socially appropriately. I also think it would be really awesome if we could get a parent implemented intervention evidence-based practice going. Unfortunately, we have a lack of parent involvement, so I'm not sure that that would happen, but I know a lot of my kids also receive services, ABA services and therapy services at home, and I think that if home and school were being consistent, that our students benefit even more, so I think that would be super helpful, but not sure that's going to happen. And as far as ensuring fidelity of implementation, first and foremost is that everyone that is implementing it is trained and trained the same way. That way there's no confusion and everybody's receiving the same information. I also think it's important to have multiple trials. And if you're having multiple people do that you have multiple people doing multiple trials. You would know if there's an outlier, something's going on, if that's not typical for the student, if maybe someone is collecting data differently or something like that, if there's that outlier. I think it's also really nice to have checklists for the people who are implementing to know what they're looking for, what they should be looking for, how to collect data, and then obviously that accountability piece. We normally have 2 people collecting data at once. That way you get to see and make sure that data is being collected the same way, and then someone to look over it as well. But I think that fidelity is important. Having lots of data is important, and then tracking that data is also important. Thanks.